All right, and welcome back to the forecast card, where I give you losing picks, and I hope that you fade them and make a lot of money because I cannot win. I cannot have a winning day in this sport. It seems like in forever, no matter what angle I do, I'm really struggling. Let's go through each game. Temple, this is just a complete and utter collapse. Tulsa team shot their season high 53% from the field. Temple, they were winning by I think 10 with like 13 minutes left. They end up losing that game by 6. Just complete implosion defensively and offensively, which always happens when I take a home team for some reason. Iowa was pretty safe. I think they actually ended up winning that game outright, but they were getting crushed for a bit by Rutgers. Ole Miss, hooked. They win by 4. They were basically winning this game all game. They were up by 10 at half or 12 at half. Game comes down to the wire. They're winning by 4. They have one free throw left, and naturally they miss it and don't end up covering. So that game is hooked. TCU, they were up 7 at half. They were dominating for a good chunk of this game. I think their lead was up to 8, and then Oklahoma State just doesn't miss. Even though TCU shot better, they had 17 turnovers, which is almost pretty sure a season high for them. Just a pathetic game from them. Not much to say. Their star player shot sub 40%, so not much you can do there when your best player isn't making their shots. They also shot terribly from the free throw line, 12 for 20, and Oklahoma State shot 18 for 24, so big gap there. Anyway, they only win that game by 1. Obviously, they don't cover. FSU, first 50% of the game, they were tied or winning, and then they ended up losing by or at some point we're losing by 20, and then they finally come back and win that game outright. So kind of looks like we got lucky, but at the end of the day, it was just a game of runs. They were winning for most of that game. Stanford, terrible first half. They did absolutely fucking nothing. They seemed to try to lock back in near the end of the game, getting within 8. But yeah, you're not going to win many games going into half down 15. Just terrible. They put 20 points up in the first half. That's not good enough. George Washington almost got backdoored. They end up losing by 8, so very close. They were dominating for pretty much 35% of this game. They were winning by a ton. Went into half winning and then barely covered, so that one was almost tight. Charleston Southern, another one. They're winning by, I think, 6 with 15 seconds left. They're winning by, I think, 11 with 3 minutes left, and they actually almost lost this game. They allowed the other team to come up down 1 with possession, and luckily they missed, but almost disgusting backdoor. Notre Dame, again, on paper, Notre Dame played fine. If you look at how they shot, they put up 97 points. They shot 47%, which is pretty solid against in this kind of game. They dominated the boards. Had 6 more boards. Had 4 fewer turnovers. Had 7 more field goal attempts. But it came down to the wire because Boston College shot 54%. They just could not miss. Everyone on their team was shooting incredibly well. Notre Dame just couldn't defend it for some reason, even though I think Boston College is a terrible program. Illinois State, dog shit team. But again, they didn't even play that badly. They shot 58% from the field. And usually when you shoot 58% from the field at home, you win those games. But nope, Drake, they shot 60% from the field. 50% from 3. They shot 81% of their field goals, even though they got out-rebounded. I thought this game should have been much closer. But again, Drake, typically who doesn't play this well on the road, shot lights out. So whatever. LSU, we're basically winning or tied with Arkansas the entire game. They went into the half actually winning by 1. And naturally, they end up losing the game by 12. Arkansas shot above 50%, as per usual. Not much to say here. Arkansas just pulled away from this game. Their lead scorer shot 78%, 25 points on 10 for 13 efficiency. Yeah. So, all of these games, I generally, except for maybe the Stanford game, felt like they were at some point covering or on pace to cover, and then they all imploded. So it is what it is. Eventually this luck has to balance out, right? I should go on a 10-game winning streak eventually, but sometimes it just doesn't feel like that. Anyway, let's get into the games that I'm painfully betting tomorrow. All right, game number 1, we have Fairleigh Dickinson at home versus Chicago State. Model has this game by 8. I think FDU is the better team, even though they don't play really well at home. They're a super consistent team. Chicago State is a bottom 10 team in the nation. I think FDU is going to find a lot of success here, getting points off steals. They're going to shoot some free throws. And in terms of regression, they're almost equal. So I do think Fairleigh Dickinson is just a better team. And if you look at how they typically play, this FDU team does play much better. They're like 40 ranks higher than Chicago State in the last 10 games. So don't really love this game because they're two dog shit teams, but I do think Fairleigh Dickinson is the better team and the better program. So game number 1, Fairleigh Dickinson to cover 6.5 points at home. All right, heading on to game number 2, we have Delaware heading on the road to play Towson. I think this is just too many points, especially in a revenge spot. Towson came into Delaware's home and beat them by 10. And now, obviously, we're going back to Towson's home, and we're getting them at +8. I do like the revenge spot here. Delaware's coming off a solid win over William and Mary in their last game. I think they're getting some confidence back. And Towson kind of struggled against a pretty bad Monmouth team. Trend-wise, Delaware has been not a fantastic away team, and Towson's been a pretty good home team. But again, I mostly like this spot because of the spot. It's not a very significant travel spot, and I do think this is a revenge game in Maryland. So I do like Delaware to keep this game close. All right, looking into game number 3, we have North Florida heading on the road against NAU. I typically especially the model likes to fade teams on the road that kind of rely too heavily on the three-point shot, and North Florida shoot over 50% of their shots from beyond the arc. So I think this is a good spot. These two teams already played, and North Alabama took that win by 6. It's kind of reverse of the other logic that I had on the last game, but I do think that was the better chance that North Florida had to beat North Alabama because NAU has been playing better at home. So I think North Florida is going to struggle to hit threes against a top 50 three-point defense that North Alabama has. And we're getting this North Florida on a travel spot where they haven't necessarily been too good as of late. Their last 2 travel spots, they lost to UNC Asheville and Eastern Kentucky. The UNC Asheville game was by 14. Eastern Kentucky, they lost by 4. And they beat Queens and Bellarmine, who are pretty mediocre teams. But North Alabama, the last 4 games at home, they 21-point win, 10-point win, 4-point win, 29-point win. They've been playing really well at home. So I think this is a much better spot here to get this North Alabama team, riding them off of a pretty hot streak where they've won 6 of their last 7. Yeah, give me North Alabama here. I have the model has them winning by 12. All right, another classic revenge spot. Basically what I've been trying to do in terms of trying to simplify my picks is I go through every game that the model likes, just outright without looking at anything else, and then I isolate it to spots that are also favorable situational wise. So either that be a favorable matchup on a road travel spot, or a favorable matchup on a revenge spot, or some kind of injuries or awkward spots or look ahead. And that's how I'm going to try to combine them rather than just looking at one or the other. These two teams played, and in this case, Jacksonville came into their home, Central Arkansas went to their home and then lost by 10. We're getting the exact same number except we're getting Central Arkansas at home. We're getting Jacksonville off of 2 solid wins, and now they're traveling over 700 miles to play this game, while Central Arkansas is going to be also technically traveling because they were on a road trip, but I think they play better in front of their home crowd. Obviously, they don't really have much of a crowd, but they do play better at home. They have a top 50 home advantage. And Jacksonville, who has been playing better on the road, I think this is a bit of an awkward spot for them, especially as they've been playing much worse as of lately. Yeah, I just think this is a good situational spot. We got a revenge angle. We're getting the same amount of points that they lost by at +10. I think Central Arkansas, who's due for a lot of regression, and Jacksonville, who's due for a lot of negative regression, can keep this game within the points. All right, and now heading on to game number 5, we have Seattle heading on the road to play Abilene Christian. Now I have Seattle winning this game by 4. I think it's a pretty decent spot for them. The biggest concern is that it is a very far travel spot, which is why I think we're getting the points, but I do think Seattle is just the better team, completely. And I think they're going to get a lot of chances here, getting a lot of free points in a game where I think the total will be relatively low. Particularly because Abilene Christian sucks at everything. They kind of rely on getting points off steals. Seattle's a team, despite having some bunch of shortcomings, they are a good team at keeping control of the ball. They also limit offensive boards. And on the other side, they played a harder schedule. They've been a better team all year, and they're gonna have a really, gonna get a lot of success at the line, where Abilene Christian is ranked 360th in giving fouls. And they're not a very deep team, so if Seattle's able to force them to foul a lot, I think they're gonna run out of depth pretty quickly. Seattle is probably going to be able to play against some really even worse bench players, because bench players in a really bad WAC team are typically like high school players that they just kind of fill in a hole there. So I think Seattle's going to find some success from three, from the free throw line, and points off steals. Now, again, the main reason why this is a little bit of a sus line is because this is a significant travel spot for Seattle. But the only reason why I'm not necessarily too concerned is because it's over 1,500 miles of traveling, and this is their first game of that road trip, where they have lost their last 4 games after traveling over 1,000 miles. Abilene Christian has also lost their last 3 of 4 at home. The only team they beat was a team worse than them in the rankings. And Abilene Christian has kind of owned. Like, Seattle did beat them only by 2 points at home earlier in January this year. So you could argue this is a good revenge spot for Abilene Christian, getting points at home. But I think that was when Seattle was really playing poorly. I think they've been playing a little bit better as of lately. They did have a rough 3-loss streak, but that was against 3 teams that are much better than them. They're back to where they're good at, which is beating teams that are in the top 200 rankings. And if you look at their power ratings, on paper, Seattle is a team that plays relatively okay on the road compared to at home, and Abilene Christian has been playing worse at home. So, and if you look at who they like to beat up, Seattle is a pretty good team when they're playing against really bad teams. They just really struggle against those mid-major teams in the 100 to 200 range. But yeah, I think other than getting them on a long travel spot, it's been 5 days since their last game. I don't think the travel spot will be as significant in this spot. And Abilene Christian is also going to be traveling, where they're traveling from southern Utah to come back home. So it won't be a true road spot for Seattle. But yeah, I think Seattle can cover this number, especially after only winning by 2 in their first game. I think they're going to want to come out bigger because they do have a favorable matchup here, and they're healthy again. So yeah, give me Seattle here on the road as 2.5-point favorites. All right, and in terms of my 2 personal plays, these are going to be completely not model-wise. These are just spots that I really like, just from looking at the schedule. I'm going to try to split these games up just to see if I can fare better on my own than I can with the model, and maybe go from there until the tournament, while I'm kind of struggling lately. But on paper, Maryland is above and beyond the better team. It's clear they're a top 10 team. Nebraska's top 50. But Nebraska, they've been playing really good at home, and we're getting them here in a revenge spot. This is a sandwich road game for Maryland, where they're coming in for one game, then heading back home. Typically a spot where they play worse. And Nebraska, after already dropping a couple games at home, I don't think they're going to drop another one. So I think we're getting a really good price with them at home at -120. Obviously, Maryland is the more talented team, but yeah, it's kind of hard to fade. Hard to fade these home teams in these Big Ten games. So yeah, I think Nebraska will keep riding this momentum and win this game at home. Game number 2, Sam Houston. I do think Sam Houston is obviously the worst team between these two, but they're a team that basically hucks up a lot of threes. And I do think they're going to have some success here because they do shoot much better at home. They're a top 10 3-point percentage, and that number includes their away games, but they play much better at home. So I think that talent is going to find some success here against the Jackson State team that doesn't necessarily defend the 3 too well. Again, Sam Houston is not a great team. They were, like they were last year, where it was a really strong option to back them. They've been a pretty decent home team. Obviously, they're 1-4 against the spread at home, while Jacksonville State is 7-3 as the road team. But I think with all these things considered, the fact that they're the better team, yada yada yada, and it's still a pick 'em. I think the books are trying to tell us something here. And I think Sam Houston is going to have a solid bounce back game uh, against this Jacksonville State team that's due for a ton of regression. And they've won 8 in a row. Now they're heading on a road trip. Meanwhile, Sam Houston, they've lost 7 in a row, and we're getting them at home. Yeah, I don't know. Everything is telling me that this Jacksonville State team, who has lost 3 of the last 4 when traveling over 500 miles, I think this is just a good spot to back Sam Houston. I don't typically love to read into lines too much, but if you're getting a line like this for the better team that plays better on the road, or the better record quality, that's running an 8-win streak versus a team that's on a 7-win streak, this is like that Cleveland State spot recently where I think Cleveland State was playing some team on their massive win streak, and then the line was kind of sus, and they lost outright, even though the line kind of... So I'm just going to listen to the line for both of these games. I think Nebraska and Sam Houston will win, despite being the worst teams in these games. So yeah, those are the 7 games I'm going to be betting for tomorrow. We'll see how this strategy goes because I can't seem to win anything. I'm not trying to overbet everything, but I kind of trying to keep trying the strategy where I start with like a pool of 20 games that the model likes with at least 1 point above the spread, compare them to a couple other models that I trust that typically narrows it down to 10, and then personally go through each game, see if there's significant regression due on either team. That got me down in this game to like 8, and then personally just go through the splits and the spots and try to find some decent angles to approach these games. So in order of the games that I like, I probably, again, model-wise, I don't love any of the games. I do like Sam Houston and Nebraska, though. So I just have no confidence in the sport right now. It's hard to say anything happy about any of these games, but yeah, just continue to fade me until I start hitting the win streak, which I'm hoping is going to come soon because my bankroll is starting to collapse, and I don't have football or Grand Slam stuff to kind of keep it afloat whenever I hit these bad streaks in this sport. But it is my favorite sport to watch, to bet. I'm hoping that we can get back on track. But yeah, if you have any questions on any games, you can always check my spreadsheet down below, and hopefully this is the last red day. Yeah, anyways, see you guys tomorrow.